Who the hell were you talking to in Chinese, Lena? The voice cut through the clatter of fine china like a blade, sharp, sudden, and so loud that the table at Section 5 stopped mid-toast. Caleb Winslow stood by the espresso bar, his gaze drilling into her like he could see through skin and bone, right into her bloodstream. Lena froze. The phone was still in her hand, screen lit up, call ended. Her heart punched against her ribs. It was just a personal call, she said, her voice low, almost apologetic. Caleb stepped forward, his suit impeccable, his presence like a cold front sweeping through the dining room. His tone didn't match the elegance of his tailored blazer or the soft piano music playing in the background. There are rules here. You speak English. Period. We don't allow unauthorized conversations in foreign languages, especially not in my restaurant. Lena blinked. She wasn't sure what stung more, the accusation or the way he emphasized foreign. He didn't wait for her to explain. You're done here. Turn in your apron. A sharp intake of breath swept through the other servers. Even the pastry chef peeked out from behind the swinging kitchen door. Lena felt every eye in the restaurant on her, Manhattan's elite, watching her fall like spilled wine on a white tablecloth. She didn't speak as she left. She didn't argue. What was there to say? The air outside bit through her thin cardigan as she stepped into the February cold. Snow hadn't fallen yet, but the sky threatened. Lena clutched her coat tighter and walked. She didn't cry. She rarely did. But the look on Caleb Winslow's face haunted her, not just anger, not just arrogance. There was something else. Fear? Recognition? The night had started like any other. Lena clocked in at 3:45 p.m., tied her hair back, and checked her section assignments. She was serving tables 5 and 6 and 8 prime spots in Elon, one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan. Owned by Caleb Winslow himself. Lena didn't know much about Caleb outside the press clippings. Divorce, tech wealth, mysterious philanthropy. He rarely visited the restaurant in person, but when he did, the staff walked straighter and spoke quieter. She had worked at Elon for 14 months. Never late. Never sloppy. Never drew attention. At 7:12 p.m., her phone buzzed in her apron. She hesitated. Phones weren't allowed during shift, but the screen flashed. May, Shanghai. She frowned. That was her mother's cousin. She hadn't heard from her in years. Lena stepped into the hallway behind the wine rack, between the kitchen and the employee lockers. She pressed answer. Lena, it's May. Something's happened. We need to talk about your mother. Lena stiffened. Now. Yes. It's about Caleb Winslow. Before she could respond, a shadow moved at the end of the hall. She turned and saw him. Caleb. His expression shifted fast, curiosity, then something darker. You speaking Chinese back here? I am my aunt, in Shanghai. It's family, Lena said. But he didn't believe her. She could tell. His jaw locked. Turn in your apron. Now she was walking through Midtown, unemployed, confused, and colder by the second. She found a bench by a bus stop, sat down, and pulled out her phone. The call from May had lasted 34 seconds. Not long enough to say anything real. She dialed back. No answer. She texted, What do you know about Caleb Winslow? What about my mom? No reply. Lena stared at the screen. She hadn't spoken about her mother in months. Not since her last birthday, when she lit a candle alone in her apartment and whispered a wish into the frosting. Her mother had died 17 years ago. Or disappeared. No body. No real answers. Lena was 12 when it happened. All she remembered was being pulled out of school early, taken home by a neighbor, and seeing their apartment half-packed. Her mom was gone. Her aunt from Queens took her in. They said not to ask questions. But now, why would May mention Caleb Winslow? What could he have to do with her mother, a woman who had been a waitress herself, half a world away, who barely spoke English and never set foot in Manhattan? Unless. Lena's breath fogged in front of her face. She opened the gallery on her phone, scrolled back to the scanned photo she kept buried in her family folder. A faded picture, her mother, young, smiling, standing in front of a large white house. Lena never knew where it had been taken. She zoomed in. A logo on the gate. Winslow Estates. Her pulse skipped. Was this why he fired her? Because he recognized something? Her voice? Her face? Suddenly, it wasn't just a job she lost. It was a door slammed shut on something deeper. And she wanted to know why. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Snow fell by morning. Thick, soft flakes that buried the sidewalks in quiet. Lena watched it from the cracked window of her apartment in Queens, a chipped coffee mug warming her hands. It was strange how the world could seem so peaceful when everything inside you was unraveling. She hadn't slept. Couldn't. Not with the weight of that 34-second phone call pressing down on her chest. Her mother, Caleb Winslow. A photograph she had stared at 100 times now, like the pixels might rearrange themselves and speak. Lena slid the photo out again. The house. The iron gate. Winslow Estates engraved in stone just to the side of the frame. It wasn't some mansion on a hill. It was the mansion, the Winslow family's private estate in upstate New York. The same one the tabloids had photographed from drones. How her mother ended up standing there, smiling like she belonged, was a question no one had ever asked. Until now. Lena, age 10, hiding under the dinner table with a stack of crayons and a ripped notebook. Her mother walked back and forth across the room, pacing as she talked on the phone in hushed Mandarin. No, I told him I wouldn't. He doesn't understand. She can't be part of that world. A pause, then softer. She's just a child. I won't let him take her. That was the night her mother burned a photograph in the sink. Back in the present, Lena turned to her closet. She pulled out an old shoebox from the very back, beneath a stack of unused scarves. Inside were faded receipts, one silver ring that didn't fit her anymore, and a small sealed envelope. It had her mother's handwriting on it. To Lena, when you're older. She had found it years ago but never opened it. Her hands shook as she slid a finger under the flap. Inside was a single page, neatly folded. A letter. Lena, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there to tell you. There are things I kept from you to keep you safe. Your father, he is a powerful man. Dangerous in his way. His name is Caleb Winslow. You must never trust him. Love always. Mama. Lena stopped breathing. Her skin prickled like she'd been dropped into ice water. Caleb Winslow wasn't just her former boss. He was her father. By noon, she was downtown, standing in front of a lawyer's office with the letter in her purse and a pounding in her ears. She hadn't thought this far ahead, but she needed help. Answers. Some thread to pull. The law office was closed. Saturday. Of course. She walked aimlessly until her legs led her back to Midtown. She didn't know why. Maybe part of her hoped someone at Elon would say it had all been a mistake. That she could have her job back. Her simple, predictable life. Instead, she saw Caleb. He stood across the street outside a sleek black car, talking to a man in a camel coat. Not arguing. Whispering. Lena ducked behind a mailbox. The other man was Asian, in his late 50s, polished and quiet. Lena couldn't hear what they were saying, but she caught a few words, just enough to freeze her in place. Should have never let her work there. If she finds out the rest. Don't worry. It'll be handled. Handled. The word pulsed like a warning. When the man turned slightly, Lena saw his face more clearly. She had seen that face before. Age 7. Her mother pulling her away from a man at a park in Flushing. That man, she said, you never speak to him. If he ever asks about me, you lie. Do you understand? Lena remembered. She'd nodded. The man was one of Caleb's people. Maybe someone from the past. Maybe someone who had been keeping tabs all along. She backed away from the corner, heart hammering. She needed help. But who could she trust? That night, back in her apartment, Lena logged into a private search database. A friend from her community college days had given her access years ago. She typed, Winslow, Caleb, family, legal history, private assets. Most results were locked behind firewalls. But something popped out. A trust fund. Annual payments made to an anonymous recipient, starting 19 years ago. The account was under the name LZ. Lena Zhang. Her mother must have used it when setting up Lena's original documents. Each year, a transfer. Same day, May 6th. Her birthday. Even after her mother died or vanished, the payments continued. Until 3 years ago. Until the year Lena applied to work at Elon. It wasn't a coincidence. Caleb had been paying for her life in secret, watching from a distance. And when she got too close, when she walked through his restaurant door, he panicked. The job wasn't random. She was never anonymous. So why did he let her get hired at all? Why did he fire her the moment she spoke Chinese? What was he afraid she'd uncover? Lena stood in the mirror that night, studying her own face like it belonged to someone else. Her mother's eyes. Her father's cheekbones. The truth was a puzzle she never asked for, one she couldn't stop solving now. And the more pieces she turned over, the more it felt like someone else had already been playing the game long before she knew it existed. A message popped up on her phone from an unknown number. If you want answers about your mother, meet me tomorrow. 4 p.m. 110th and Amsterdam. Come alone. Lena stared at it, her fingers cold. She didn't know if it was a trap. But she would be there. The wind whipped along 110th and Amsterdam like it had something to say. Lena stood outside a shuttered bookstore, the streetlights flickering above her, the sky a bruised gray. She glanced at her phone. 3:58 p.m. She had arrived early. She didn't like being early, not anymore. Waiting gave her too much time to think. And thinking led her to too many dangerous places. Like the possibility that she was being followed. Or that this meeting wasn't about her mother at all. At 4:03 p.m., a man stepped out of a black sedan across the street. Slim, well-dressed, Asian American, about 40. He nodded once, then walked straight past her and down the sidewalk. At the corner, he turned into an alley and stopped. Looked back. Lena hesitated, then followed. The alley opened into a gated service entrance with a keypad. He punched in a code, and the door clicked open. In here, he said. She didn't speak. Not yet. Just stepped into the dark stairwell behind him. Down. Stone walls. Metal handrails. The scent of dust, wine, and something older. They were beneath a restaurant. She realized that quickly. Elon. Of course. He led her through a side corridor into a large cellar. Wine racks climbed the walls. Shelves of vintage bottles towered overhead. This place was off the books, the real private stock. Only then did the man speak. My name's Daniel Liu. I used to work for your mother. Lena stiffened. You knew her? I knew she was in trouble. He looked around before continuing. And now so are you. Lena at age 11, watching her mother so late at night. Why don't we ever visit your old friends? She'd asked. Her mother had smiled softly. Because some friends become enemies once they see your truth. Daniel pulled a chair out for her. She didn't sit. Her pulse thumped in her neck. How did you know to contact me? I've been watching Caleb for years. Your name came up when you started working here. I stayed away. Your mother wanted you protected. But when you answered that call in Chinese, it lit a fire under Caleb. He thinks you know more than you do. Do I? She asked. Daniel's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. That depends on what you remember. I remember my mother disappearing. I remember being told not to ask questions. I remember a letter saying Caleb Winslow is my father. Daniel gave a long, tired sigh. Then you remember enough to be in danger. Lena took a slow step forward. What happened to her? Daniel looked up at the ceiling like he could see through it, to the restaurant above. She was a translator. Brought over from Shanghai. Educated, clever, loyal, at first. Caleb brought her into the company as a language consultant. But she became more. Too close. And then, inconvenient. Inconvenient how? She knew about his offshore holdings. His hidden research. The fund transfers no one was supposed to trace. And she had me. Yes, Daniel said. She had you. And that made everything harder to bury. Lena sat down now. The air in the cellar seemed heavier. A pressure against her ribs. Daniel reached into a small leather folder and pulled out a photo, a surveillance still. Caleb, 20 years younger, standing beside Lena's mother, arm around her waist. Smiling like a man in love. There was a time when he wanted to acknowledge you. But then, the Winslow legacy got in the way. And my mother? She was given a choice, disappear quietly, or be made to disappear. He hesitated. I helped her choose the first one. I set her up with new documents, money, a way out. But she never made it, Lena whispered. Daniel shook his head. No. She went off the grid for a year. Then one day she called me, panicked. Said someone had found her, that she was going to try to confront him, get closure. That was the last time you heard from her? Yes. Lena leaned back in the chair, her fists clenched on her lap. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Because I didn't know who you were, or what side you might be on. And because Caleb isn't just a man anymore, he's an institution. People who go against him don't last long. Lena stared at the photo. Her mother, smiling in a moment that didn't look real anymore. A still frame from a dream. Or a lie. Then why tell me now? Daniel nodded toward the wine racks. Because last week, Caleb had this room swept for bugs. He thinks someone's leaking information to federal investigators. You were the last unknown variable in his system. He fired you out of panic, not proof. But it means he's on edge. And when a man like Caleb is on edge, people get hurt. A sound. Soft. Metallic. Footsteps above them. Lena froze. Daniel pressed a finger to his lips. They weren't alone. The two moved quickly behind a row of wine barrels, silent as ghosts. The cellar door creaked open. Someone entered. Lena held her breath. The man wasn't Caleb. He was younger. Late 20s. Blonde, sharp suit, phone in hand. He paced, muttering to someone over Bluetooth. I told him we need more time. No, she doesn't know yet. I think. But if she talks to Ethan, it's over. Lena's stomach dropped. Ethan. Caleb's son. She remembered him vaguely from the restaurant. He'd come in twice, sat alone at the bar, tipped in $100 bills. Handsome in a careless way, eyes like steel behind glass. If Ethan knew something, or worse, if he was part of this. But the man upstairs continued pacing, never looking down. Daniel whispered, we have to go. I have a contact. Someone inside the Winslow circle. Someone who might help. Who? Ethan. Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from a blocked number. Stop asking questions. Final warning. She looked at Daniel. They know we're talking. Daniel nodded grimly. Then we're out of time. The door to the wine cellar slammed shut behind them as Lena and Daniel made their way out of the back alley. A shiver ran down Lena's spine as they hurried down the dimly lit street. She kept her eyes on the pavement, moving fast, trying not to look over her shoulder. But the feeling that they were being watched clung to her like static, refusing to dissipate. Daniel didn't speak as they walked, his pace brisk but measured, almost like he knew the city's shadows too well. Lena couldn't stop herself from looking at him, wondering how much more he knew than he was letting on. How long had he been watching Caleb? How long had he known about her? Why did you say Ethan back there? Lena finally broke the silence, her voice low, trying to keep her panic under control. Caleb's son? Why would you trust him? Daniel glanced at her, then back at the road ahead. Ethan isn't like his father. Caleb, he's got people around him, yes, but Ethan's different. He's been groomed for this world, but he doesn't have the same heart. He's a liability to his father. A liability? Daniel didn't answer at first. He pushed his hand through his hair, frustration evident. There are things Caleb has kept hidden from Ethan. Things that he shouldn't know about his own family. Ethan's been kept in the dark. You wouldn't believe what that kid's seen, what he's been forced to ignore. Lena furrowed her brow. She remembered Ethan's face, careless, cold, that strange indifference he wore like a mask. But she also remembered something else, a flash of vulnerability, a moment where his eyes seemed to flicker with more than just arrogance. For a brief moment, she saw doubt. "Do you think he'll help us?" she asked, her voice more skeptical than hopeful. Daniel hesitated before speaking. "I think Ethan's tired of being kept in the dark. But you need to be careful. He might want something in return for his help." Caleb's blood runs through his veins. That's not easy to shake. Lena, age 12, sitting across the dinner table from her aunt. "Why don't we ever go to Caleb's house?" Lena had asked innocently. Her aunt's face stiffened, her smile forced. "Because your father isn't someone to trust, Lena. People like him, they lie, they hurt others to get what they want." Lena shook the memory off as they reached a nearby subway station. She could feel the weight of everything hanging in the air now, her mother's disappearance, Caleb's secrets, and the unsettling truth that she was diving headfirst into a world she didn't understand. As they waited for the train, Lena's phone buzzed again. She checked the screen, her breath catching when she saw the blocked number. "Leave this alone. You're playing with fire." A chill shot through her, but before she could process the message, Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the platform. "No more phones. They're tracking you." "What?" Lena stopped, confused. "They're tracking everything. Your calls, your texts. It's too risky to stay out in the open much longer." Lena's heart pounded. "So what now?" Daniel's face hardened. "Now we find Ethan." The next morning, Lena found herself in a different part of Manhattan, a quieter, wealthier part, where the streets were lined with brownstones and the air smelled faintly of fresh flowers and money. They arrived at a high-end condo building, one of those places where the doorman had the power to make or break your day. Daniel led her through the lobby, and she followed closely, trying to act like she belonged. Ethan Winslow's name was on the list of residents. Daniel pressed the elevator button, and they rode in silence, Lena's thoughts spinning faster than the floor numbers on the display. She couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was the last person she should trust. Yet, there was something gnawing at her, something that told her he might be her only way forward. The elevator doors opened, and Daniel led her down a long hallway to an apartment at the end. He knocked twice, then stood back, waiting. Seconds later, the door opened. Ethan stood there, his face shadowed, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes darted between Lena and Daniel, then settled on Lena with an unreadable expression. "What do you want?" Ethan's voice was smooth, but the tension in his posture was palpable. Daniel stepped forward. "We need to talk. It's about your father." Ethan's brow furrowed, and he took a slow sip from his glass. "My father? You know what? I don't have time for this." "I think you'll want to hear this," Daniel interrupted. Ethan hesitated, his gaze flickering between them. "Fine. Come in." They stepped inside. The apartment was as cold and sterile as Lena expected. Modern furniture, glass windows with a view of the city skyline, everything in its place but somehow devoid of life. Ethan motioned for them to sit. "I don't know who you think you're talking to," Ethan said, still standing, "but I don't want any part of your little game. Caleb's business is Caleb's business. I've been trying to stay out of it, and now you—" He stopped himself, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Lena. "Wait a minute. You're the waitress, aren't you?" Lena froze. I used to work at Elon." Ethan's lips twitched, like he was trying not to smile. Yeah, I figured as much. You're the one who spoke Chinese, right? Why does that matter? Lena shot back, frustrated. It matters because I've been watching you, Ethan said, his voice dropping lower. I've been watching him too. And I don't know if you're really ready for what you're about to get yourself into. Lena swallowed hard. What do you mean? Ethan walked over to a desk, pulling out a file from a drawer. He slid it across the table to Lena. If you want to know the truth about Caleb, you need to know about the Winslow Foundation. Lena opened the folder. Inside were documents, financial statements, pictures, and at the very end, a name that nearly made her choke. Lena Zhang. I thought your mother might have kept you in the dark about this, Ethan said quietly, watching her reaction. But it's all connected, Lena. Everything Caleb's done, the foundation, the research, the people he's crossed. It's more than you think. Lena stared at the file, her fingers trembling as she flipped through the pages. There, in the middle of the documents, was a photograph. A familiar one. Her mother, sitting at a table, shaking hands with a man in a suit. Behind them was the logo of the Winslow Foundation. And the man was someone Lena knew all too well. Ethan, who is this man? Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's eyes darkened. That's someone I hoped you'd never meet. Lena's heart raced as she stared at the photograph in the folder. Her mother's familiar smile seemed almost unreal in the dim light of Ethan's sterile apartment. It was a smile that had haunted her childhood, a smile that hid more than she could ever have imagined. The man beside her mother in the photo was unfamiliar to Lena, his sharp features giving away little of his intentions. But the logo on the wall behind them, a globe entwined in barbed wire, struck her immediately. She had seen it before. The Winslow Foundation. Ethan sat back in his chair, watching her, his face unreadable. Do you understand now? Lena's fingers trembled as she laid the photo back on the table. Who is he? She asked, her voice low. The name on the foundation's paperwork, though, rang a bell. Dr. Philip Kingsley. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes hardening. That man is at the center of everything your father's been doing behind closed doors. He's the one who helped Caleb establish the Winslow Foundation's black market research operations. What your mother got mixed up in, it wasn't just translations or corporate deals. It was much darker. Lena sat in stunned silence, her thoughts spinning. This was bigger than she ever imagined. This wasn't just about her father or her mother's disappearance anymore. It was about a network of corruption and power, stretching further than Lena could comprehend. What kind of research? She finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan didn't meet her eyes as he answered. Biotech. Experimental research, human trials, all of it funded by the wealth Caleb amassed through the foundation. And your mother? She was one of the first to translate documents for Kingsley. She had access to things no one should ever have known about. Lena's mind raced as she processed his words. Biotech. Human trials. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it was one that was too horrific to comprehend. She had known her mother as a quiet, reserved woman who never spoke of the past. But now, with these revelations, Lena couldn't help but wonder how much of her mother's life had been a lie. Why did she leave? Lena asked, looking up at Ethan. If she knew all this, why didn't she come to me? Why disappear? Ethan rubbed his face, a rare show of emotion. She didn't want you involved. She was trying to protect you. After she found out too much, she had to disappear. Caleb was hunting her. She knew that if she stayed, you would be in danger, too. Lena's head spun. Her mother had run not out of fear for herself, but for Lena. She had known the depth of the danger and had chosen to stay hidden, to give Lena a chance at a life free of this dark legacy. But that was all shattered now. Lena was in the middle of it, deeper than she ever wanted to be. Lena, age 9, sitting with her mother on the couch. Why don't we go on a vacation? She asked, eyes hopeful. Her mother's face froze for a moment, then she smiled, brushing a strand of hair out of Lena's face. "We'll go one day, Lena. One day, when things are safer." Lena shook the memory off, the weight of it crushing her. Her mother had always known. She had always known what kind of world Caleb Winslow lived in. But she had kept it from Lena, kept her in the dark. Lena looked at Ethan. "So what now? What do I do with all of this?" Ethan's expression darkened. "The truth is, you can't just walk away anymore. Caleb's already watching you. He's always been watching. He'll come for you if he thinks you're digging too deep." "I don't care." Lena's words were firm. "I have to know the truth. I need to know what happened to my mother." Ethan paused, studying her. He seemed to weigh his options, then finally exhaled. "You need to understand something, Lena. Caleb's not just some businessman. He's a monster. The Winslow Foundation was created for one purpose, to fund research for something bigger. Something dangerous." Lena frowned. "What do you mean?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "A drug. An enhancement. Something that changes the human mind, makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. It's what Caleb's been after for years. And your mother, she was one of the people who helped him get there." Lena felt the ground slip out from under her. "A drug? What are you talking about? This sounds insane." "Look at the records," Ethan replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "Look at the research. Your mother, Dr. Kingsley, and Caleb, they were working on something that would have changed everything. Control, power, manipulation. It was all about creating the perfect human." He gave a bitter laugh. "And your mother? She was the translator, the one who made sure all the research notes were understood. She became involved in something much larger than any of us realized." Lena, age 14, staring at a stack of her mother's old books. One title stood out to her, The Mind's Control, The Science of Power. She had been about to ask her mother about it when she saw her mother's face, pale, tense, her eyes shadowed as she locked the book away in the attic. "Did you know about all this?" Lena asked, shaking herself from the memory. "Did you know what they were doing?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I found out too late. I tried to stop it, tried to warn my father. But Caleb didn't care. He had a bigger plan, a bigger vision. And anyone who got in the way of it, they didn't last long." Lena clenched her fists. "You knew about this and still worked for him? How could you?" Ethan's gaze was dark, his jaw tight. "I didn't have a choice. You think I had a happy childhood? You think I wanted to end up like this?" He stood up, his voice rising. "Caleb, he controls everything. People like us don't get a choice." Lena swallowed hard, her mind racing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about stopping Caleb, exposing everything he had hidden. "I need to go to the authorities," Lena said, her voice steady. "This has gone too far. People need to know what he's doing." Ethan stepped forward, his hand resting on the table, his eyes intense. "You really think they'll believe you? Caleb has too much power. If you go to the authorities, it'll be the end of you. You'll be a ghost." Lena's resolve hardened. "Then I'll make them believe. I'll show them everything." Ethan shook his head, his face grim. "You don't get it, do you? Caleb isn't just powerful. He's untouchable. But if you want to go up against him, you better be prepared for what's coming." Lena stood up, meeting his gaze. "I'm ready." Just then, Lena's phone buzzed again. Another message from the blocked number. "Stay out of this. You don't know what you're dealing with." She looked at Ethan, her heart racing. "He knows." Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is bigger than you think, Lena. You can't stop it alone." Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The phone buzzed in Lena's pocket again, but this time she didn't look. She couldn't afford to. Every time the unknown number popped up, it was a reminder of just how far the web of Caleb Winslow's influence spread. "Get in," Ethan said, breaking her from her thoughts. He stepped toward the door, his eyes darting around the apartment as if expecting someone to jump out of the shadows. "Where are we going?" Lena asked, her voice more forceful than she expected. "To get information," Ethan said, his tone quiet but urgent. "We're going to get a look inside the Winslow Foundation." "It's time to move." Lena swallowed. She wasn't ready for this. No one could ever be ready for this kind of war. But there was no turning back now. Her mother had paid the price for Caleb's secrets. Now it was her turn to face them. She nodded and followed Ethan out into the hall. Lena, age 15, sitting on her mother's bed while her mother packed a suitcase. "Why are you leaving, Mom?" Lena asked, confused and scared. Her mother didn't answer immediately. She just looked at Lena, a sadness in her eyes. "It's not safe anymore. I can't protect you and keep you in the dark anymore." "Caleb, he's not who you think he is." The car ride was silent, both of them lost in their thoughts as Ethan navigated through the crowded streets of Manhattan. Lena's fingers tapped nervously on her knee. She had no plan, no backup. She was diving in blind, hoping the pieces would fall into place as she moved forward. When they arrived at the Winslow Foundation building, Lena's heart began to race. The towering glass structure looked almost corporate in its sleekness, its front steps polished and immaculate, its security team seemingly ever vigilant. "This is it," Ethan muttered, glancing at the front doors. "We go in, we gather what we can, and we get out before anyone notices we're here." "Just like that." Lena shot back, skepticism in her voice. "You make it sound easy." Ethan smirked. "It's never easy, but we don't have much of a choice. Caleb's people are already onto you. If we don't act fast, we lose." Lena gripped the strap of her purse tighter. "I'm ready. Let's do it." The lobby was sleek and modern, filled with polished floors and statues. A receptionist sat at a desk, barely looking up when they entered. Ethan led the way, his movements confident, like he belonged here. Lena followed him, trying to mirror his nonchalance, but her heart was pounding in her chest. As they approached the elevator, Ethan pressed the button for the top floor. The doors slid open, and they entered, the silence thick with tension. As the elevator ascended, Lena's thoughts raced. The risks, the stakes. She could almost hear her mother's voice again, warning her about people like Caleb. About the cost of getting too close to the truth. "What's on the top floor?" Lena asked, trying to sound casual, but her stomach twisted with nerves. "The executive offices," Ethan said, his voice tight. "Where the real decisions are made. Where the files are hidden." "But it's not going to be easy. There are cameras everywhere. Security." Lena nodded, taking a deep breath. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. They reached the top floor, and Ethan walked out first, blending in with the sleek, well-dressed employees. Lena followed close behind, trying to stay calm, trying to keep her composure as they navigated through the sterile office space. Then they reached a glass-walled conference room. Inside, a group of executives sat around a long table, talking animatedly. Lena glanced at the nameplates on the table, her heart leaping when she saw Caleb's name. "He's here," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "We need to be quick." They moved silently through the office, slipping past rows of cubicles and down a hallway to a side door. Ethan pulled out a keycard, swiped it, and the door clicked open. "This is it," he said. "The server room. If we can access the files, we can find everything you need. But stay quiet. If anyone sees us, it's over." Lena's mind was racing as they entered the small, dimly lit room filled with servers. Ethan went to work immediately, his hands moving quickly over the keyboard as he bypassed security protocols. Lena kept watch by the door, her pulse thundering in her ears. "Got it," Ethan said after a few tense moments. He pulled a small external drive from his pocket and connected it to the server. "This will give us everything: funding, research, personnel. Everything Caleb's been hiding." Lena could hardly breathe. This was the moment. The one piece of evidence she needed. The one thing that could expose Caleb for everything he was. Suddenly, the door swung open. Lena froze. A man in a suit stood in the doorway, his face expressionless. A security guard. "What are you doing here?" the guard asked, his tone calm but threatening. Ethan's hand shot out, blocking Lena from view. His voice was cool, collected. "Just a routine check. Is there a problem?" The guard looked at them for a moment, eyes narrowing, before he stepped aside. "No problem. Just making sure everything's running smoothly." Ethan nodded and quickly ushered Lena out of the room. They moved swiftly down the hall, adrenaline fueling their every step. Lena, age 16, pacing the living room, her mother on the phone in the next room. "Mom, where are we going? What's going on?" Her mother stepped out of the room, her face pale. "Pack your things. We're leaving tonight. Caleb knows too much. He's coming for us." They made it to the elevator and pressed the button for the ground floor, hearts pounding. But as the elevator doors began to close, the familiar sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Lena's blood ran cold. "Run," Ethan hissed, shoving her toward the door. They bolted, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the empty building as they sprinted toward the exit. They were almost there when a voice boomed behind them. "Stop right there." Lena turned to see two security guards sprinting toward them. Ethan shoved her forward. "Go. I'll hold them off." "Ethan!" Lena screamed. He didn't look back. He just kept running, blocking their path as Lena burst through the door and into the cold night air. She ran, faster than she had ever run before, her breath ragged in her chest. She didn't look back. Lena reached the alley behind the building and ducked into the shadows, her breath coming in quick, sharp gasps. She pulled out the drive and looked down at it, her hands shaking. But then her phone buzzed again. Blocked number. Her heart stopped. She answered it before she could think. "You've made a big mistake, Lena," the voice on the other end said, chillingly calm. "This is your final warning." Lena's blood ran cold. She looked around the alley, her mind racing. They knew she had the drive. And they were coming. Lena stood frozen in the alley, her phone still pressed to her ear, her breath coming in quick, uneven gasps. The voice on the other end of the line sent chills down her spine. It was Caleb. She was sure of it. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Lena." Caleb's voice was smooth, like a velvet glove hiding a steel fist. "You think you can expose me? You think you can just waltz in and take back what's mine? You're already in too deep." Lena gripped the phone tighter, trying to keep her composure. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with, Caleb. I know about the foundation. I know about the research. And I know you're lying about everything." A laugh echoed through the line, cold and detached. "Lying? Oh, Lena. Your mother knew more than you think." She understood the bigger picture. But she wasn't strong enough to handle it. And now you're just like her. Stubborn, idealistic, and too weak to make a real difference. Her pulse quickened as her mind raced. He was taunting her, trying to break her down. But she couldn't let him win. Not now. Not when she was so close to unraveling everything. "What do you want, Caleb?" Lena demanded, forcing herself to sound calm. "What will it take for you to stop? You've already ruined my life. You've taken everything from me. You still don't understand, do you?" His voice dropped lower, more menacing. "You were always a part of my plan, Lena. Your mother was just a pawn. You're a key piece. I'll give you one last chance to walk away, to stay out of this. But if you keep digging, if you keep trying to expose what I've built, I won't hesitate to put you in the same grave as your mother." The line went dead. Lena stood there for a long moment, staring at the darkened street. Her breath was shaky, but her resolve was clear. Caleb was trying to scare her into submission, trying to get her to quit. But she couldn't back down now. Not when she had the proof. Not when she was this close to bringing it all to light. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, the external drive clutched tightly in her hand. Her mind raced, And for the first time in days, she felt a surge of purpose. She had to keep moving. She had to find a way to expose Caleb, to make sure her mother's sacrifices weren't in vain. Lena, age 18, sitting in the living room, staring at the empty chair where her mother used to sit. "Mom, why don't you talk to me about what's going on? Why are you always so secretive?" Her mother looked at her, a sadness in her eyes. "Lena, I'm trying to protect you. There are things I can't explain, things I can't let you see. You don't know what's at stake." The memory of her mother's warning burned in Lena's mind. Her mother had known. She had known what Caleb was capable of, what he was willing to do. And she had tried to protect Lena from it. But now Lena had no choice but to face the monster head-on. She turned and hurried down the alley, toward the street, her mind set on one thing. She had to find a way to get the information out. She couldn't keep it to herself. The world needed to know what Caleb Winslow was capable of. But first, she needed a safe place to hide. She couldn't go back to her apartment, not with Caleb's people hunting for her. She needed to find someone she could trust. Someone who could help her take down the Winslow Foundation once and for all. Lena, age 22, standing at the edge of a train platform, waiting for her mother to arrive. She glanced at the ticket in her hand, confused. Her mother had never missed a meeting, never been this late. The message on her phone had been brief. "I'm sorry. I can't keep running anymore. Caleb knows. I love you, Lena. Please forgive me." Lena shook her head, forcing the memories away. She couldn't afford to dwell on the past. Not now. She needed to focus on what was happening right in front of her. The city was quiet in the early morning hours, the streets bathed in the pale glow of streetlights. Lena's footsteps echoed against the pavement as she made her way toward the one place she thought might offer her some answers, Ethan's apartment. He had promised to help her to get the information from the Foundation servers. When she reached the building, she hesitated, glancing around nervously. Was it safe? Was Caleb already watching her? She didn't have the luxury of time. She pressed the buzzer and waited, praying that Ethan was there, that he wasn't already compromised. A moment later, the door buzzed open. Ethan stood on the other side, his face grim. "Lena," he said, his voice low. "You made it." "Barely," she muttered, stepping inside quickly and glancing over her shoulder. "Caleb knows. He's been calling me. He's threatening me. I don't know how much longer I have before he comes for me." Ethan's expression darkened. "It's not just you he's after. He's been watching me too. We're both in this now, whether we like it or not." Lena frowned, her thoughts racing. "Then what's our next move?" "I have the drive with all the information. We can't sit on it anymore. We need to get it out to the public. But we can't do it alone. Caleb's too powerful." Ethan nodded. "We'll need a plan. But we have to be careful. Caleb has eyes everywhere. If we go public now, he'll bury us before we even get a chance to speak." Lena slammed her fist against the table. "I don't care anymore, Ethan. I can't sit back and do nothing. I can't let him keep getting away with this. Not when I have the proof." Ethan hesitated, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We can't just throw the evidence out there. If we go about this the wrong way, we'll be dead before we get a chance to speak." Lena looked him in the eye, her resolve unshaken. "Then help me, Ethan. Help me find a way to take him down. We're running out of time." Lena, age 24, pacing the living room. Her phone buzzed again. Another call from Caleb. She didn't answer this time. Ethan stepped back, his hand rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Okay, we need to reach out to someone outside of Caleb's network. Someone who can take this seriously. Someone with the power to go after him legally." Lena nodded. "Someone like the press? The government?" Ethan smiled grimly. "The press would be the first to sell us out. The government, that's a different story. But we need a whistleblower. Someone who has the inside scoop. Someone who can help us get the truth out." Lena's mind whirred. A whistleblower. She had an idea. Where's your mother's journal? Ethan asked, breaking her from her thoughts. Lena hesitated. She had almost forgotten about the journal. The one thing her mother had left behind, full of notes, warnings, and strange connections. It could be the key to unlocking everything. I'll go get it, Lena said, determination in her voice. We'll need everything we can get. But as she turned to leave, Lena's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Caleb. It was a message from an unknown number. I know what you're doing. And I know you're going to fail. There's no way out. Lena's stomach twisted. Who else knew? Lena stared at her phone, the words from the unknown number lingering in her mind like a poison. I know what you're doing. And I know you're going to fail. There's no way out. It felt like a threat, a warning she couldn't ignore. But she couldn't afford to be paralyzed by fear. Not now. Not when she was so close to exposing everything. She'd come this far. There was no turning back. Who was that? Ethan asked, his voice edged with concern. Lena didn't answer right away. She knew exactly who it was, someone who was watching her, someone who wanted to keep her quiet. Caleb's reach was far too extensive for her to feel safe, no matter how many steps ahead she thought she was. But there was something she couldn't shake, the eerie certainty that this message wasn't just from Caleb. It felt like a different threat entirely. Probably Caleb's people, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. But it doesn't matter. We need to move forward. Ethan eyed her warily but didn't press. What's the next step? Lena took a deep breath. We need to find the whistleblower my mom mentioned. She kept notes in a journal about everything Caleb was doing, people he was working with, organizations he had under his thumb. We've got to track that down, and we need to find someone who can help us expose it. Ethan nodded, a grim look on his face. I have an idea of who we could contact. Someone who's been trying to get the truth about the Winslow Foundation out for years. But they're hard to reach, and we're going to need to be careful. Lena's heart skipped a beat. A whistleblower. Someone who knew what Caleb was hiding. It felt like a ray of hope breaking through the darkness. Who is it? She asked, her voice tight with anticipation. I'll need to make a few calls, Ethan said, his eyes narrowing. I can't guarantee they'll talk to us. But it's our best shot. Lena nodded. She didn't have time to waste. Caleb's game was getting more dangerous by the minute. Every second she hesitated could cost her everything. Lena, aged 25, sitting in a dimly lit room, her mother's journal in front of her. The pages were filled with notes, scribbled words, and names she didn't recognize. Caleb's name appeared over and over again. But one name stood out to her, Franklin Holt. Franklin Holt, Lena murmured to herself, her finger tracing the name in the journal. It meant nothing to her, but it had been mentioned repeatedly. Her mother had underlined it twice, as if it were a critical clue. Who's Franklin Holt? Lena asked, glancing up at Ethan. Ethan's brow furrowed. He was an ex-employee at the foundation. Worked in the legal department before he disappeared. No one's seen him in years. But rumor has it he knows where the bodies are buried. If anyone's going to have answers, it's him. Lena's eyes hardened. Then we find him. Lena, aged 26, in the middle of an argument with her mother. Mom, you're hiding something. I know you're hiding something from me. Why can't you just trust me? Her mother looked away, tears welling in her eyes. I can't protect you if you keep digging, Lena. Please. Let it go. The search for Franklin Holt was no easy task. They tracked him across city databases, social media profiles, and backdoor forums, but every lead seemed to be a dead end. It wasn't until they received a cryptic email from an anonymous source, containing a single address, that the pieces started to fall into place. This is it, Lena said, her fingers gripping the paper with the address, heart pounding in her chest. We have to move fast. Ethan nodded. If Holt's been hiding for this long, it's not going to be easy to get to him. We need to be prepared for anything. They both knew that Caleb wouldn't let a whistleblower like Holt disappear without notice. If Holt had the answers, he was a marked man. And anyone who tried to get to him would likely find themselves in grave danger. The address led them to a rundown building on the outskirts of the city. It looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in decades. The windows were covered in grime, and the only sign of life was the faint glow of a single light through the curtains. Lena felt her stomach drop as she approached the door. This was it. This was the moment when everything could change. The truth about Caleb Winslow, about her mother's disappearance, about everything that had been kept hidden for so long, it was all about to be revealed. She knocked. Once. Twice. The door creaked open slightly, and a pair of tired eyes peered out. The man who answered was older than she expected, his face gaunt and lined with age. His eyes flickered with recognition, but he didn't say a word. Instead, he stepped back and gestured for them to enter. Franklin Holt. Ethan asked, his voice low. The man nodded, shutting the door behind them. He didn't waste any time. You're looking for answers. I know why you're here, but I don't know if you're ready for the truth. Lena felt a chill run down her spine. We need to know everything. My mother. I know about your mother, Holt interrupted, his voice harsh. And I know Caleb. I know what he's done. But getting the truth out won't be easy. He's a dangerous man. And I'm not the only one who knows what he's capable of. Lena felt a knot in her stomach. What do you mean? Holt took a deep breath, glancing toward the window, as if checking to see if anyone was watching. Caleb's been in control for far longer than anyone realizes. The Winslow Foundation isn't just a charity. It's a front. A place for laundering money, buying influence, and burying the truth. Your mother was involved in something she couldn't get out of. And now it's too late for her. Lena's breath caught in her throat. What happened to her? Where is she? Holt hesitated, his eyes darkening. Your mother made a mistake. She tried to take Caleb down. She thought she could expose him. But Caleb, he's always one step ahead. He made sure she paid the price. And you, Lena? You're the next target. Lena felt the world spin around her. Her mother, gone because of Caleb's reach. And now it seemed like she was standing on the edge of the same fate. We have to stop him, Lena said, her voice trembling but determined. But just as Holt began to speak, a sudden crash from outside the apartment made them all freeze. Someone was coming. The crash outside the apartment door shattered the stillness of the moment, and Lena's heart skipped a beat. Her instincts kicked in, and she reached for the gun hidden beneath her jacket, the one Ethan had insisted she keep for her own protection. It was heavy, unfamiliar, but necessary. Every part of her knew that things were spiraling toward an explosive conclusion. Ethan's eyes widened in alarm. Get down. No. Without thinking, Lena ducked behind the nearest table, her breath shallow and rapid. Franklin Holt moved with a speed that didn't match his frail appearance, throwing the blinds open to peek out the window. Who is it? Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. Holt's face twisted into a grimace as he looked back. I don't know. But Caleb doesn't leave loose ends. If they're here, we don't have much time. Lena's mind raced. Caleb's people. They've found us. She clutched the external drive with the damning evidence in her pocket, feeling the weight of it like a ticking bomb against her side. There was a sound of footsteps, too many to count, moving down the narrow hallway toward the apartment. They were getting closer. Lena's fingers tightened around the gun. Her mother's warnings echoed in her head. You have to be strong, Lena. You have to fight for the truth. Her mother had been right. This wasn't just about her. It was about something far larger than herself. Caleb had to be stopped. Suddenly, Holt motioned for them to move. They're getting ready to break the door down. We need to get out of here. Now. Ethan grabbed Lena's arm and pulled her toward the back of the apartment. They dashed through a narrow corridor that led to a fire escape, the heavy sound of pounding fists against the door growing louder. The door to the fire escape slammed open, and they tumbled out onto the rusted metal staircase, the chill of the night air biting into Lena's skin. They moved quickly, taking the stairs two at a time, adrenaline making each step feel like an eternity. As they reached the ground, Lena glanced back, and a flash of movement caught her eye. A black SUV was parked nearby, its headlights dimmed but unmistakable. Caleb's people were already there. They were closing in on her. But there was something else, something she couldn't put her finger on. The SUV had no markings, no obvious affiliations. It was too clean. Too perfect. Go! Ethan hissed, yanking her arm to pull her down the street. They sprinted, their footsteps pounding against the concrete, but Lena's mind was elsewhere. Franklin Holt's words from earlier echoed in her ears. Caleb's always one step ahead. Was this a trap? She wondered. But she didn't have time to dwell on it. The sound of tires screeching and engines roaring pulled her back to the present. They weren't alone. Lena risked a quick glance over her shoulder. Two SUVs were now tailing them, close enough that she could make out the dark figures inside. It was a matter of seconds before they were trapped. No matter how fast they ran, no matter how many twists and turns they made, Caleb's men would catch up. Lena's breath came in ragged gasps, but her thoughts were sharp, clearer than ever. She couldn't be captured, not now. Not when she had everything she needed to destroy Caleb's empire. Suddenly, she stopped running, jerking Ethan's arm to halt him. "We need to split up," she said, her voice firm despite the panic rising in her chest. "You take the east side of the park. I'll go west." Ethan turned to face her, confusion etched on his face. "Lena, no, this isn't the time for splitting up." "I'm not asking," she snapped, her voice low. "You need to get the evidence to the press. Don't call me. Don't contact me again unless you're ready to go public." The moment Caleb realizes the information's out there, he's going to make sure we're both dead. For a moment, Ethan hesitated, but then he nodded, his face grim. "Be careful." And with that, they split. Lena darted west, running through dark alleyways and side streets, her mind focused on one goal: survival. She needed to get to safety. She needed to make sure the evidence reached the right hands before Caleb wiped her off the map. Lena, aged 24, sitting at a table with her mother. The conversation was tense. "Mom, you can't keep doing this," Lena said, frustration bubbling up. "You're putting yourself in danger. You're putting both of us in danger. You have to get out of it." Her mother shook her head, a somber look on her face. "You don't understand. It's too big. I'm too deep. I can't get out." "Then I'll help you," Lena said. "I'll do whatever it takes." Her mother looked at her with such sadness. "No, you can't. It's already too late for me. But you, Lena, you have a chance. You have to finish what I started." Lena's pace quickened as the memory of her mother's last words propelled her forward. "You have a chance." That was all she needed to hear. She couldn't back down. Not now. She rounded a corner and saw the familiar sight of a dimly lit coffee shop, one of her mother's old haunts. A safe place, or so she hoped. There, standing by the back door, was a figure she recognized. It was the contact her mother had trusted. "You've been expecting me," Lena said breathlessly, her heart pounding in her chest. The woman nodded, her face partially obscured by a hood. "I've been following your movements. It's time." Lena handed over the drive without a second thought, knowing that this was her last shot. If this woman was truly trustworthy, if she could really get the information out to the world, it would be the beginning of the end for Caleb Winslow. But as the woman took the drive, she paused, glancing at Lena with an unreadable expression. "Are you sure you want to do this? Caleb will come after you. He won't stop until he's silenced you." Lena squared her shoulders, her voice firm. "Let him. I'm not afraid of him anymore." Lena, aged 25, staring out of her mother's hospital window after a long and agonizing silence. "Why didn't you tell me, Mom?" she whispered. "Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth?" Her mother, barely conscious, managed a faint smile. "Because you weren't ready. You are now. The woman nodded and stepped back. Then it's done. As Lena turned to leave, a voice from behind her stopped her cold. Not so fast, Lena. She spun around, her hand already reaching for the gun. But the voice wasn't Caleb's. It was familiar. It was Ethan. But as Ethan stepped into the light, the unmistakable sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the alley. The cavalry was coming. And it wasn't just Caleb's men. Lena's heart hammered in her chest as she turned to face Ethan, trying to steady her breath, her pulse racing. His face was pale, his expression tense, and there was something in his eyes, a glint of urgency that didn't match the calm facade he was trying to project. "Ethan, what's going on?" Lena asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The weight of the situation hung heavy in the air, suffocating her with each passing second. "I had to make sure you were safe," Ethan replied, his gaze darting over his shoulder toward the shadows. "I couldn't leave you in the dark any longer. Caleb, he's not just watching you. He's watching both of us." Lena felt a chill crawl up her spine. Caleb had eyes everywhere. That much was clear. But she couldn't waste time. She had the evidence now. The proof that would end Caleb's reign of terror once and for all. "You're lying," Lena said, her voice steely. "This isn't about keeping me safe. This is about keeping the truth from getting out." Ethan's eyes widened, and for the first time, his composure faltered. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You don't understand, Lena. There's a lot more at stake here than you think. If you release that information, you'll be walking into a storm you can't control. Caleb doesn't play by the rules. He'll burn everything to the ground, including you." Lena's mind whirled. He's trying to protect me. But it wasn't protection. It was fear. Ethan was afraid. And that fear, she realized in a gut-wrenching moment, wasn't for her safety. It was for something much darker. "You know something, don't you?" she asked quietly. "You've known more than you're letting on." Ethan's face shifted, his jaw tightening as if he were struggling with himself. His eyes dropped to the ground, avoiding hers, and in that moment, Lena knew. She had been so focused on Caleb, on the lies that had surrounded her for so long, that she had missed the truth that had been right in front of her all along. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice cracking, "you've been working with him, haven't you?" There was no answer, no denial. His silence spoke louder than anything else. Lena's blood ran cold. The man who had been by her side through this entire ordeal, the one she had trusted the most, had been in on it all along. Ethan wasn't just a bystander. He was a key player in Caleb's game. Lena, aged 27, sitting in the back of a crowded cafe with Ethan. "Lena," Ethan had said, eyes full of concern, "we're getting close to something big. If we keep pushing, it's going to change everything. You need to be careful." She had nodded, oblivious to the truth that was already beginning to slip through his guarded words. "You've been playing me from the beginning," Lena said, her voice a mix of anger and disbelief. She took a step back, her hands shaking as the weight of his betrayal hit her like a physical blow. Ethan's face twisted with guilt, but there was no remorse in his eyes, only regret. "I didn't want this, Lena. I never wanted to hurt you. But you don't understand. You're in too deep. Caleb, he has leverage over me. He has leverage over everything. I didn't have a choice." "A choice?" Lena scoffed, her voice rising. "You had a choice, Ethan. You could have walked away. You could have warned me. But instead, you chose to lie, to protect him." "I never wanted you to get involved," Ethan said, his voice shaking now, as if the truth had become too much for him to bear. "I was trying to protect you, but Caleb's too powerful. I had to follow his orders. It was the only way to survive." Lena shook her head in disbelief, her chest tightening with the betrayal. "I can't believe this. After everything, you were just another one of his puppets." "I'm sorry," Ethan said, his voice barely a whisper. "But I didn't know how to stop him. I thought if I played along, I could keep you safe. But now he trailed off, his eyes haunted by something deeper. I didn't think you would actually dig this far. I didn't think you would uncover everything. Lena's mind spun with the weight of his confession. Ethan wasn't just an accomplice, he was a victim in his own way. But that didn't change the fact that he had betrayed her. And more importantly, that betrayal had nearly cost her everything. Her eyes narrowed. You're not the victim here, Ethan. You had a choice. He didn't respond, his gaze falling to the ground. Lena knew what she had to do. Lena, age 25, sitting with her mother in the hospital, clenching her fists. I won't let him win, Mom, she said, tears brimming in her eyes. I won't let him take everything from us. Her mother smiled faintly, her grip on Lena's hand weakening. Promise me, Lena. Promise me you'll fight. You're stronger than you think. Lena exhaled, pulling herself together. She had come too far to stop now. She couldn't let Caleb, or Ethan, or anyone else dictate her future. She had to expose the truth, no matter what the cost. I'm not going to run anymore, Lena said, her voice resolute. I'm going to finish what my mother started. And if you won't help me, Ethan, I'll do it alone. Ethan didn't move. He didn't try to stop her. His silence was an answer in itself. Lena turned away, heading for the alley where she had hidden the evidence. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. You're stronger than you think. She reached the alley just as the first of Caleb's men turned the corner, his figure a shadow in the distance. Lena's heart pounded in her chest, but her mind was clear. She had no more fear. Only one thing mattered now, the truth. She pulled out her phone, quickly sending the file to every journalist and whistleblower she could reach, ensuring that the evidence was disseminated far and wide. And then, she waited. The sound of footsteps grew louder. Caleb's men were closing in. But Lena stood her ground. She wasn't afraid anymore. The truth was out. The next moments were a blur, shouts, a struggle, and then the unmistakable sound of sirens in the distance. Caleb's men hesitated, knowing that the game had changed. Their orders were no longer enough to protect them. The walls were crumbling, and the empire that Caleb had so carefully built was starting to fall apart. Lena turned toward the approaching sirens, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She had done it. She had taken down Caleb. And with the truth in her hands, there was nothing left to stop her. But as the sirens grew louder, a figure stepped from the shadows, a man with a familiar face. The last person she expected to see. It was Caleb. In the aftermath of the revelations, Caleb Winslow's empire crumbled under the weight of the truth. The media, the authorities, and everyone who had been complicit began to turn on him. But Lena knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. She had fought for the truth. She had fought for her mother. And now, with her world forever changed, she could finally move forward, knowing that the truth could never be silenced again. The city felt different now, like it was holding its breath. The sirens had long since faded into the distance, but the weight of what had just happened lingered in the air. Lena stood at the edge of the street, her back pressed against the cool brick of an old building, her mind spinning with everything she had just uncovered. The evidence had been sent. Caleb was exposed. And yet, despite the rush of victory, something gnawed at her, something she couldn't shake. She had done it. She had taken down Caleb Winslow, the man who had destroyed her mother's life, the man who had torn apart everything she held dear. But now that the truth was out, there was no going back. As Lena stood there, her phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the silence. She hesitated before pulling it out. The name that flashed across the screen sent a jolt through her chest. Ethan. For a moment, she considered ignoring it. He had betrayed her, after all. He had lied. He had worked with Caleb, but something about the way his name appeared, so desperate, made her pause. With a shaky breath, she answered. Lena. Ethan's voice was hoarse, strained. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that I was wrong. I should have told you everything. Lena closed her eyes, feeling the burn of unshed tears. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much he had hurt her, how much his betrayal had shattered her. But the words wouldn't come. She had no more energy to fight him. "Why now, Ethan?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "Why are you calling me now? After everything?" His voice cracked, but he quickly cleared his throat. "I had to make sure you were okay. You don't understand, Caleb's not done. He won't let this go. You've just made yourself a target, Lena. They're coming for you. They're coming for both of us." Lena's stomach twisted. "I don't care," she muttered, the anger she felt toward him mixing with the dread settling in her gut. "I exposed him. It's over." "No, Lena, it's not over," Ethan insisted. "They'll find a way to silence you. We can't let them win." A chill ran down her spine. Silence me? How far would Caleb go to protect himself? She couldn't afford to be naive anymore. But there was something in Ethan's voice, something too urgent for her to ignore. "Where are you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "I don't know how much time we have," Ethan said, panic creeping into his words. "I need you to trust me. Just for one last time. Meet me at the warehouse. The one we talked about, behind the docks. Please, Lena. If we don't act now, it'll all be for nothing." Lena didn't answer immediately. She was tired of the lies, tired of running, tired of feeling like she was constantly fighting for control over her life. But deep down, she knew he was right. If Caleb's people were still out there, if there was even a chance of stopping this madness for good, she couldn't back down now. "Fine," Lena said, her voice tight with resolve. "I'll be there." The line went dead. Lena stood there for a moment, looking down at the cracked sidewalk beneath her. It wasn't just the weight of her actions that burdened her. It was the constant uncertainty, the fear that no matter how hard she fought, the truth might not be enough to win. She had exposed Caleb, but what if that wasn't enough? What if it only made things worse? Her thoughts were interrupted by a faint rustling in the alley nearby. She spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the gun she still kept hidden. It was a reflex now, a reminder that she was no longer the same person she had been just a few days ago. The figure that stepped out from the shadows made her blood run cold. It was Caleb. Her breath caught in her throat as he slowly approached her, his expression unreadable. "You're brave," Caleb said softly, almost admiringly, his voice smooth, controlled. "But you're foolish, Lena. You think you've won? That exposing me will change anything? You've just become a pawn in a much larger game." Lena took a step back, her heart pounding as the cold edge of his words sliced through her. "You don't scare me anymore, Caleb." He smirked, but there was something dark in his eyes, something that sent a shiver down her spine. "Oh, I don't need to scare you, Lena. I just need you to understand one thing. You can't stop this. You're too late. The pieces are already in place. And you're just one more casualty of a war you never had any chance of winning." Lena's fingers tightened around the gun, but she didn't pull the trigger. "Not yet." "You think this is over?" she spat, her voice shaking with fury. "You think you've already won? You're wrong. The truth is out. And no matter what you do, you can't erase that." Caleb's smile faded, replaced by something far colder. "We'll see about that." Before Lena could react, he turned and disappeared back into the shadows, leaving her standing there alone. Lena, aged 28, sitting on the floor of her childhood bedroom, holding a letter she had just found hidden in her mother's old things. Her hands trembled as she read the words that changed everything. "Lena, if you're reading this, then you know what's coming. Caleb is more dangerous than we ever realized. Whatever happens, know that I love you, and I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this." Lena shoved the memory away. Her mother's warnings felt distant now, like a lifetime ago. The truth had come at a heavy cost. But it wasn't over. Not yet. She had made her decision. She was going to end this. Once and for all. With one last look at the dark alley, Lena turned on her heel and ran, her thoughts focused on the warehouse. Ethan would be waiting. The pieces of this twisted puzzle were finally starting to fall into place, and Caleb's empire was on the verge of crumbling. She wasn't going to let him win. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?